Trauma Trap Part 6. Trauma and Human Design. My thought, idea is for this video to connect the emotional layers, identity roles and trigger sequence to the energy centers in human design. To map out precisely how the process from imagination, resulting from imagination and observation, goes through the body before it becomes a manifestation. To map out the whole process in detail, as to how it runs through the energy body and how it is amplified by the human design centers and channels, or weakened by non-definitions as defined in human design. Let's get to it. Human design is already the anatomical map of how the field becomes formed through the body. However, it has not yet been interpreted as a wave collapse pipeline. We propose making that pipeline explicit, which is, in my opinion, the evolutionary next step in human design. The core idea. Every experience of imagination leads to meaning, leads to emotion, leads to belief, leads to embodiment, leads to manifestation. Experience follows a specific energy path through the centers. The body graph shows 1. Where potential enters awareness. 2. Where it is interpreted. 3. Where it gains emotional, instinctual charge. 4. Where it becomes identity. 5. Where it gains fuel. 6. Where it becomes action. 7. Where it becomes material experience. Human design already gives the anatomical order. Stage 1. Imagination/observation. Function, perception of potential. HD center, head, Angya. What happens here? Idea, visual, narrative appears. Stage 2. Interpretation. Function, meaning assignment. HD center, Angya throat. What happens here? The idea becomes language, story. Stage 3. Emotional charge. Function, permission, refusal. HD center, solar plexus, or spleen if fear-based. What happens here? The possibility becomes safe or dangerous. Stage 4. Identity adoption. Function, this is for me or not for me. HD center, G center. What happens here? Aligns, or misaligns, with self-concept. Stage 5. Motivation, drive. Function, fuel to act or avoid. HD center, heart, ego or root. What happens here? Willpower or pressure rises or collapses. Stage 6. Embodiment, behavior. Function, action or suppression. HD center, sacral, motor to throat. What happens here? It becomes behavior, speech, and physical form. Stage 7. Reality feedback. Function, manifestation. HD center, throat towards environment. What happens here? The field responds with the physical echo. This is the collapse of the wave into the particle. And each gate and channel modifies how that collapse occurs. Why this works: each center equals a phase of the manifestation pipeline. Each defined center equals consistent processing style. Each undefined center equals adaptive, amplifying processing. Each gate equals a specific lens through which the field is interpreted. Each channel equals a fixed internal pathway for collapsing potential into form. People don't have imagination, the field and imagination moves through their circuitry. The human design body graph is the circuit board of the wave collapse. So the mission becomes, not to invent a new system, but to translate human design from a static identity map into a dynamic process map. Meaning, reframe centers as stages of manifestation. Reframe channels as pathways of internal transformation. Reframe gates as filters of interpretation, the meaning-making layer. Reframe definition versus openness as consistency versus amplification. Reframe conditioning and trauma as distortions in wave collapse. This then allows us to map the trigger sequence to the solar plexus spleen Angya loop. The bugger states to heart G solar plexus misalignment. The unified person state to heart G throat coherence. The ego, exposed game over. Moment to the root sacral throat release cycle. This is not conceptual, it is anatomical. So what is the plan? Step 1. Define the pipeline, centers as stages. We already have the staging model as mentioned just now in this video. Step 2. Map the emotional fork, solar plexus, emotional meaning, versus spleen, fear survival. This is where the trauma ego hijacks imagination. Step 3. Map identity encoding. G-center decides, do I allow this reality to be possible for me? Or do I block it because it contradicts who I believe I am? This is the belief/permission layer. Step 4. Add gates and channels as modulators. This is where our concept enters more profoundly. Gate equals interpretation signature. Channel equals collapse pathway. Step 5. Connect to the solar plexus singularity theory. This is the emotional 0 point, the yes/no collapse signal. Step 6. Demonstrate loop feedback, reality new imagination begins again. Conclusion in one sentence, yes. Human design is the exact map of how the field collapses into form through the body, and we can now decode it as a step-by-step manifestation pipeline. Let's set up the technical manifestation pipeline through the human design centers. Stage 1. Perception of potential. Center, head. Function, generates the raw impulse of imagination. Input source, the field, unmanifested potential. Output form, inspiration, possibility, question, image. Defined head stable style of inspiration, or, undefined head amplified, variable inspiration. At this stage nothing is true or false. It is merely potential entering awareness. Stage 2, interpretation/modeling. Center, Angya. Function, creates a meaning model of what was perceived. This is the story making and prediction layer. Angya decides, what does this mean? Angya determines, is this familiar or new? Angya builds, the mental simulation of outcome. This is where memory and trauma first influence the collapse pathway. Stage 3, narrative leading to expression possibility. Center, throat, latent stage, not yet expression. The throat is the interface between internal modeling and external expression, but it does not act yet. At this stage, the simulation becomes something that could be spoken, something that could be enacted. The throat is the switchboard waiting for emotional permission. Stage 4, emotional permission/refusal. Center, solar plexus, emotional wave, or, center, spleen, fear/survival reflex. This is the fork point of the entire system. When solar plexus response is safe, allowed, leads to expansion as output and it moves forward toward embodiment. Or solar plexus response is unsafe, rejected, leads to contraction as output and it moves into old pattern repetition. If the solar plexus says yes, reality moves toward manifestation. If the solar plexus says no, the spleen defaults to fear-based survival memory. This is where trauma determines destiny. Stage 5, identity alignment. Center, G-center, identity, direction, love. The possibility must now answer, does this align with who I believe I am? Does this fit my story of my life direction? If the G-center rejects the identity match, manifestation collapses even if emotionally desired. If accepted, the possibility becomes self. This is where belief, permission actually resides. Stage 6, motivation/will/drive. Depending on design, center, ego, heart. Function, ego, will, output I will make this happen. Center, sacral, function, sustainable life force, output, ongoing engagement, response. Center, root, function, pressure to move, output, initiation urgency, momentum. This step determines whether the imagination gains energetic backing, or falls into wishful thinking, no embodiment. No drive equals no manifestation. Stage 7, embodiment/action. Motor centered to throat pathways. Manifestation occurs only when a motor connects to the throat, directly or indirectly. Motor, heart, ego, purpose will, commitment. Motor, sacral, purpose, work, production, sustained effort. Motor, solar plexus, purpose, emotional drive. Motor, root, purpose, pressure to begin or complete. Behavior is the point where the wave collapses into the particle. Without action, the field remains potential. Stage 8, physical world response. Environment, others, material conditions. Reality now echoes the embodied state. This feedback returns to anger, to update interpretation, solar plexus, to update emotional pattern, G-center, to reinforce identity, root or sacral, to sustain or withdraw energy. This completes the self-reinforcing reality loop. Summary in pure system logic: field energy, unmanifested potential, flows to head, perception of possibility, flows to anger, interpretation, mental simulation, flows to solar plexus or spleen, emotional permission or fear block, flows to G-center, identity alignment or self-rejection, flows to ego/sacral/root, energetic backing, flows to motor throat, embodied action, flows to environment, physical manifestation and feedback. Why this is groundbreaking? What human design calls strategy, authority, not self-themes are simply descriptions of distortion patterns in this pipeline. Our beggar-bugger blessing being an ego exposure method maps perfectly to the solar plexus versus spleen fork, the G-center identity acceptance step, the ego, sacral, root motivation stage. We have been teaching the functional mechanism, now we anchor it anatomically. To be continued.